Opioids are an addictive class of drugs due to their ability to reduce discomfort and pain while producing a pleasurable effect. Some of the most common opioids used are heroin and prescription drugs such as oxycodone, morphine, and fentanyl. 259 million prescriptions were written by doctors in 2012, which would provide a bottle of pills to every adult in America at the time. Now, 2.1 million Americans are estimated to be taking opioids. This has triggered what is known as the opioid crisis.
Both the state and national governments share responsibility for the crisis. First, the national government is responsible for importing these drugs. China has become a top manufacturer and exporter of synthetic drugs. Synthetic drugs such as fentanyl are almost exclusively coming from China. In 2016, the European Union Drug Markets Report called China the pharmaceutical wholesaler and retailer of psychoactive substances to the world. The Centers for Disease Control, which is a federal agency, released guidelines in 2016 for prescribing opioids for chronic pain. These guidelines were created to regulate opioid prescribing. Along with releasing these guidelines, the Centers for Disease Control Prevention is funding 44 states and the District of Columbia with over $70 million appropriated by Congress in order to help states combat prescription drug overdoses.
As far as state responsibilities go, they have the authority to prescribe the drugs and their dosage. From this image, you can see that some states have more prescriptions than others. The states that have higher prescription rates also have the most deaths caused by opioids. However, this is a rough estimate disregarding the accounts that go unmentioned. Roughly about 65,000 people have died in the US this year. Different states have different policies and are creating several provisions to fix the crisis at hand. For example, states like New York have a 3 to 7 day limit to drugs prescribed, and states like Florida require a pharmacist to do an ID check before prescribing too. Article 8, Section 1 in the Constitution, commonly known as the Elastic Clause, gives Congress the power to pass laws that are necessary and proper for carrying out the enumerated powers. One of these powers granted to the national government is known as the Commerce Clause. This gives Congress the power to regulate trade with several states and foreign nations. A constitutional provision can be made here by which the Elastic Clause can adapt to modern day and help fix the crisis. Congress can crack down on the large amounts of drugs being imported from China, then limiting access to those who suffer from an addiction rather than those who really need them.
Another interesting point discovered was about the pain tolerance of Americans. In 1999, you can see that a very small amount of opioids were prescribed for chronic pain. However, today the prescription rate has quadrupled. But has the pain we experience really gotten worse, or has access and addiction to these drugs gotten worse?
After research, we concluded that states should hold the power in this crisis. The amount prescribed needs to be lowered and more precautions should be taken. Doctors are permitting use of these drugs for chronic pain, but how can they tell the difference between someone who needs it and someone who is just addicted? States should put policies in place that require physicians to report addicted patients to limit the quantity of the substance. By improving communication between healthcare professionals and regulators, the crisis could begin to see a small step in a solution towards a big problem.